we have a lot to talk about because we just came back from Academy and having run 8 sessions at the booth for our Excite, there's just a lot of tips that I think practices can benefit from after hearing from 8 different types of programs who are implementing this technology. So we'll get underway. I just want to remind everybody, Practice Habits is the name of this web series that we're having every single week. And the idea is to help practices implement new technologies. We're building up a dossier of training tools and guides like sessions like this, but also turning it into other curriculum for team training. But what I found after my 20 and a half years at the helm of Vance Thompson Vision as the CEO is that some of the best technology, while impressive, lacks the support to help get things implemented at the point of care. And so these sessions have been designed to really help practices and practice leaders like you implement. And so I'm happy to do this week in and week out for all of you. Many of you are new today, and some of you have been at all of the sessions. I can see now that Dr. McCarty, it looks like you've joined. Can you hear me okay?
I can, yeah. I had to do it on my phone. My computer wasn't working well. I'm trying to figure out how to get my video to come up though.
No worries. We'll just
Um,
as you're working on that, we're just getting started here, and this is real casual. So even if it doesn't work for video, just
yes.
know we'll take you any way we can get you. We know you're a busy guy, and you got to step back into clinic and surgery, so we'll keep rocking here. The
Sure.
thing I
Yeah.
want to
Well,
do,
I'm glad I made it on. So, yeah, I'm good to go.
okay, great. I thought I'd introduce you properly with our next slide here, Dr. McCarty. I mentioned to some of our guests here how, you and I have been on several panels together to talk about how you're implementing the light adjustable lens. And I know that you've got a really diverse practice in Texas, in a town maybe that many wouldn't think of as being like the epicenter of refractive innovation, and yet I've always been impressed with how you've used your team to implement this technology. You've really included them in the process. And so maybe just give everybody a little background as to how you set up your work with the light adjustable lens and kind of the makeup of your practice.
Yeah, sure. So, Amarillo, Texas, where I'm born and raised, town of about 200,000 people, right on I-40. We have a unique situation in Amarillo. So I have a family history of optometry. My dad and sister were both optometrists. So I grew up in the eye world. In our town, over the past few years, after I first joined, our group became kind of the only group of ophthalmology in town. We had some outliers, and through retirement, through moving, through other doctors joining our group, we became the only business in town for ophthalmology. And so we don't really have that competition, which is actually a freeing thing. We can do what we feel is best for the patient. We don't have to try to do things just to compete with other ophthalmologists out there. And so that's been very helpful. We have a great relationship with our optometric community. And so we don't, typically do the optometric things. We don't have optical shops. We don't do glasses prescriptions, contact prescriptions. So it's kind of nice. Our group is pretty diversified. We have 3 retina specialists. We have a cornea specialist. We're a glaucoma specialist, an oculoplastics guy. And there's 3 of us now that are doing cataract surgeries. One of our main partners retired back in I guess, December. And so that's kind of increased our load some. The couple of folks we brought in to replace him, they were married, just out of training, and they ended up moving back to home close to family to have kids. And so we're pretty busy right now, but that's kind of our makeup. I get a lot of my referrals from our retina partners. They're super duper busy. And they do quite a bit of surgery. And of course, their surgeries create cataracts. They're always looking for, ways to improve their patients' vision. So I see a lot of retina patients, which, as we know, with a lot of the premium options, aren't great patients for that. So I'd say probably 35% of my patients, if not more, come from our retina clinic and even our glaucoma clinic. Um, we have a unique situation where I have my own little individual pod in our building and my own employees, yet we're all one group. I go under the name of McCarty Eye just for my advertising, for website, informational stuff. but we're kind of part of Panel Eye Group as far as employees and billing and all that. So it's a unique situation. We have our own surgery center that is just for eyes, and we fill it up, a 2-room surgery suite that just stays pretty darn busy, well run, very, very, very efficient over there. I have found that if you're trying to get into the light adjustable lens, there's a lot of wrong ways to do it. And there's probably a lot of right ways to do it, but through trial and error over the past 4.5 years, we've figured out a pretty good niche on how to incorporate it into our practice so it doesn't completely consume all of my time, because it can be time consuming. I think that's a big issue with this lens, incorporating it into your practice, is it just takes a while. There's multiple treatments. It's not just see the patient, do their surgery, and then you're done. A couple of post-ops and they're out of there. There's several follow-ups, and then the discussion can be a little bit time consuming. And now if you're adding a new lens, you got to talk about 4 or 5 or 6 different lens options, and so that can be time consuming. So definitely getting your team on board is critical, and I imagine we'll probably go into some of those details a little bit later in our discussion. But I have my team on board. They're excited about it. All the way to the point now, I've even had my team members start doing not just lock-ins, but even some of the adjustments. And then with that, giving them a little bit of a bonus for helping me out. And so they get a little piece of that pie too. And so that keeps them really happy as well. So it's a win-win for the patients, for the doctors, and for the staff as well.
Well, first of all, it's one of the reasons why we have you on here is because I know that you're progressive and using this technology. You've used it for almost 5 years, but you've also shifted how you've done things over time. I want to just ask, what was your work with, IOLs before, especially advanced IOLs? What were you using? And then kind of how did you decide to invest in the LDD and then the light adjustable lens?
I've been in practice 21 years. So I was probably about 16 years in, um, at the time I started doing the light adjustable lens. And my offering at that point, we're an Alcon group basically. We like the Centurion. We deal with Alcon products, Alcon lenses, and so of course the Toric, and the Panoptics and the Vivity are kind of our main premium IOLs that we used. And just through all the evolution of the diffractive IOLs, I never got excited about them. It's a long conversation with patients, and that conversation tends to be after surgery, and it tends to be a negative conversation explaining, well, the halos will get better, or your vision's really good, but you do give up some of that distance vision to get the better near vision. And I seem like our conversations were more trying to make excuses, and I didn't use it a whole lot. So the main premium lens I used was the toric lens. I thought there's no reason not to if they have enough astigmatism, and great results with that is very predictable. And so I would say my percentage, which I tracked this from day one of my practice 21 years ago, it was probably about 14% went to premium IOLs, and the majority of those were toric lenses. And at the time I knew about the light adjustable lens. It wasn't real prevalent. So I didn't know a whole lot about how it worked. But of course, when Jonathan Bryden came into my office, one of the reps, just right before lunch, and I gave him 5 minutes. I said, I'll give you 5 minutes. And we talked a little bit, and it just sounded like something that'd be worthwhile. I don't do refractive surgery, so I'm not a refractive surgeon, but they say we do refractive cataract surgery. And I never really bought into that, because to me, refractive means you're customizing for that patient. And yeah, we're picking lens powers, but it's not really custom for the patient. But the light adjustable lens had that refractive component to it. And so I kind of like that idea, thought it'd be worthwhile. So at that time, we had 5 cataract surgeons in our group. And I talked to all of them, said, listen, I think we ought to get on board with this. I could only convince one of them to get on board with me. And he was the one who just retired. He was, well into his 70s, but he was a big time LASIK, RK, great surgeon. He did my LASIK 21 years ago. Great surgeon. He said, yeah, I'll jump on board with it. He kind of started using it mainly on like post RK patients. That was his niche. And so whenever I started using it, none of the partners would. So we bought the LDD, put it into our shared surgery center, so a different building than where I practice. and having no idea how quickly it'd grow. And Jonathan said, he put the numbers out there because the machine's expensive. He goes, if you do one patient a month, you can get this thing paid for. And I'm thinking, if I'm doing this, I don't want to do just one patient a month. We're
Mhm.
doing a lot more surgery than that. I don't want it to be 1% or less of my patient load. And so, he assured me we'd be fine with that, and I kind of agreed with him. And I had no idea how quickly it'd pick up. But I think the reason it picked up is because I talked to the patient about it prior to. I think education from the doctor typically makes a world of difference in getting the patient excited about it. And so my first couple of months, the LDD numbers grew a lot faster than I expected. And as you can tell, when you have LDDs, then you do a couple of adjustments and a couple lock-ins afterwards. That starts to pile up on you. And so having a machine at a different office or a different facility didn't work. And so because I was doing more of them, I had my partner say, listen, I got to bring that into my office. We started doing them, 1 day a week at the end of clinic. That became a burden. So we did 2 or 3 days a week at the end of clinic. And then I started scattering the patients throughout the day. But there are days where I'd be up to 17 or 18 LDD treatments. And that just takes a lot of work. And you don't want that all back to
Right.
back. And so we've kind of spaced that out. But that was kind of my initial run into it. And it worked well, and it picked up a whole lot faster than I expected. But I think the reason it picked up so fast again was the patient education. I didn't just talk to the patients a little bit more. I have now 5 lenses I'm offering them, so I got to explain the differences in the technology. So I created just a front and back page education sheet that I sent out to the patient before they see me. I spent time and finally broke down and developed a website that had a lot of information on it, so I direct the patients there. And then I would spend 5 or 6 minutes with each patient or longer just talking about the lens and explaining the differences. And there's, you over time, you learn how to tweak your conversation, as you know. Um, but that time before paid off because then the discussions you have after surgery with these patients, we're not explaining away the problems, but you taking out the cataracts, they're already seeing better. So they got the wow factor just from cataract surgery. And now you're able to tweak their vision and make it even better, give them kind of a second wow factor where you're either making the distance vision better or adding some of the near vision. And so it kind of gives that second wow factor. And I'd actually have patients in my dilating room waiting for their adjustments, talking to my cataract evaluation patients who are just kind of hanging out, waiting in there. And they're saying, listen, this is the best lens. They're loving it. I can do this now. He's about to do a light treatment. It's going to change it even better. And so they're selling this lens to my patients before I even see my patients, my new patients. And so you don't see that with any other lens, be it a toric lens or a multifocal lens. And so that was kind of exciting to see. Got my staff and all this excited to work with it even more. And it's just grown tremendously since then.
Well, there's so much there that I want to unpack with you. So first of all, first question, um, do your partners use it now that they've seen it be so successful in your program?
Yeah, so that's actually kind of funny. They absolutely do, and our group now owns 3 light delivery devices. But that came about because one, they started seeing how good the results were, and two, a lot of the patients from our retina group, and they tried to round robin the cataracts, to the different cataract surgeons, and not just all send to one doctor. But their patients are asking for this lens, and so they have to send their patients to me, and the retina doctors love this lens, it's a silicone lens. So a lot of people go, well, they wouldn't want a silicone lens. They love this lens. In fact, I've worked on their family members. I had one of our doctors, her mom was in Houston. She flew up from Houston to Amarillo. It's not a close place. That's a 10 and a half hour drive just so I could do her light or LAL lenses. Another retina doctor had both his parents come from Albuquerque, about 4.5 hours away. So I
Wow.
could do his lenses. So they're sold on it. And so when the partners started hearing that and seeing how quickly it picked up, within that year, they jumped on board and they've been doing really well since as well.
Now it started as for you were at roughly 14% adoption, right? And so has the adoption of this technology helped raise that number? And if so, or even if it hasn't, has that number, have you just eaten into your existing premium market, or have you found that it's actually growing your whole premium category?
In my situation, because I wasn't doing a whole lot of multifocals, it was mainly just the toric lenses. Um, and so I don't think it's eaten into that very much. If anything, some of those converted, but my numbers quickly grew. And I think that, again, it comes down to that discussion with the patient and the education, because once they hear the technology and how things can actually affect their end results, and it's a long-term benefit. It's not just going to change in a year or two, that they're going to live with this for a long time. My conversion rate now, and really within the first year and a half after starting the LAL, went from 14% to 45%, sometimes as high as 52%. And half of those are LALs and half of those are toric. I have just the occasional Vivity or PanOptics scattered through that. So it's greatly increased both my toric numbers, but certainly a lot of LALs, which obviously more than pays for the machine, more than pays for the time that I spend talking to the patients in the clinic, doing those adjustments, because this is going to be your most expensive IOL that you're offering to the patient. And so when you kind of break it down and you end up making, if you say, well, it costs so much money, or, I don't know, the extra time you got to put into it. Well, if you're doing a light treatment and you're getting paid, say, $500 or $600 for a light treatment for 5 minutes, that's pretty good work. And so it's worth the extra work because you're making more money for it. So it definitely is cost feasible. But then when it's so much better for the patient, it just makes a lot of sense. And so, but yeah, so that's kind of how that turned out.
Well, so that's a couple of nice testimonies for your program. One, you grew, right, by roughly 30 to 35%. That's impressive. Two, it expanded a new portion of your premium options, because a lot of the critiques that we might hear from maybe alternative technologies or competing technologies is, listen, this is just going to eat into your existing, base of premium. When time after time, what we find happens in reality is that it's opening up, it's unlocking a new group of patients that you might not have been servicing or had the confidence to service before. The other thing I just wanted to ask is, was this an opportunity for you to charge more?
Yeah. So I think you don't want to undercharge for this, because one, the technology is fantastic and is so much better for the patient, but two, it is more work. And
Hmm.
so it should be work that's reimbursed. And so it's definitely going to be the most expensive IOL that you put in. I started at a lower rate. It's still higher than my PanOptics, but I started at a lower cost initially and then bumped that up. But I will tell you, I'm still, from what I am told from RxSight, I am about the cheapest person in the country to get this done. And we charge about $3,000 an eye to do it. And
Yeah.
so I think most places it's 4 or even $5,000 an eye to do that. And so
Well,
I think
Dr.
there's
McCarty,
definitely yeah, you can definitely charge more for it.
the uh, after visiting so many practices and interviewing so many, I've had a hard time finding folks that are sub 5,000 at all. So that's one, I think that's completely up to you how you charge, and you're certainly giving a good value to your patients. One of the things I think that we can learn from as a whole is what we did wrong with the LASIK industry when we priced things, too low for the amount of work that we were doing, and it really helped,
Right.
frankly, really hamstring that part of the category. But that's an aside. The other thing I just wanted to ask you is, you and your partner, maybe for confidence reasons, you said it kind of started as a niche for compromised corneas, right? Post-refractive patients. And does that still hold true, or is it now expanded as your kind of workbench for all comers? And the same thing for your partner.
Right. So for my partner, it kind of stayed that way for the most part. But again, he was nearing the end of his career and kind of slowing down. So he was kind of a weird partner to have want to join in and spend money on a new technology and learn that. But that's just the way he was. He's always in the forefront. I was never quite like that. I didn't have a lot of limitations. So obviously, the biggest limitation initially was pupil size. And studies said 7. I went down to 6.5. People had to be at least 6.5 millimeters. And as I got more experience with it, and as RxSight got more experience with it, I'll do a pupil as small as 5.0. I don't go smaller than 5. I go to 5.0. That's the treatment zone for the lens. And so I've had great success treating patients with that smaller pupil. So yeah, back to even a previous question, it did increase the number of patients I could offer the premium lenses to, the better premium lenses to.
Hmm.
I think when you have a Panoptics or even a Vivity, you're a little bit limited on who you refer or recommend those for. On this one, who do I not recommend it for? Well, if their pupil is less than a 5, and I had one of those just this afternoon or this morning, she really wanted it, unfortunately, but um, that's about the main thing. There's not many patients that I would not offer this lens to, and that I think has really helped grow that premium practice. So yeah, you may steal a few from the Panoptics patients, but in my mind, you're getting a much better lens and you're charging more for it. So I think it's definitely not a bad swap in that scenario. And you don't have as near as many of those negative conversations with the patients afterwards, which in my book goes a long ways. I hate negative conversations with patients, especially if you do a lot of cataract surgery. And the other thing is, though, I do a lot of cataract surgery, but you don't have to. I've talked to a lot of doctors who do a fraction of the number of cases we do. They do 400 or 500 a year, and you can still make this work really, really well. So it's not necessarily just volume of patients, but it's the taking the time to have the discussion with the patient ahead of time, and don't write anybody off. Don't assume that just because they're a teacher and don't make a big salary, they're not going to be able to afford it. First patient I did was a 44-year-old teacher, healthy eyes, but had early cataracts. And I still see her, and that was 5 years ago, and she's as happy as she can be.
Yeah. And what a great investment for her, especially with her usage daily in the classroom. Dr. McCarty, I'd like to open up the audience now to be able to ask you some questions. This is meant to be super interactive, and you and I have had a nice chat, and I'm sure we'll talk even more here in a little bit. But what questions do any of our audience members have?
Do you think Texas Tech is going to recover from losing to Arizona State?
No.
That's painful.
That's easy.
Tell me, that's painful. I went to Tech Med School, and so yeah, that my daughter goes to Tech right now, so that was quite painful. Yes,
I
indeed.
live in Lubbock. I live in Lubbock, and then I grew up in Nazareth, and so spent all my childhood going to Amarillo. So very familiar with your stomping ground.
Right? Yeah.
Dr. McCarty, one question that I get a lot is when I when I talk to either new surgeons or surgeons who are already doing a lot of premium, they say, I would do that lens, but it just takes too long. What do you say to people?
Yeah. Yeah, don't underestimate it. It does increase your time in the clinic. But if you figure it out, I can give you some great tips on how to work that out. Where when I first started and I got busy pretty quickly, and I was still kind of muddling through it a little bit. I would, instead of being out of clinic at 5, I'd be out of clinic at 6 or 6:30. Doing those light treatments at the end of the day, and I will tell you now, I'm busier than I've ever been. I'm doing more cataract surgery than I've ever done. And my clinic, so I have a pretty good schedule. I'll admit it. Monday and Wednesdays are my long days. Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays are half days. My half days on Tuesdays, I used to be done by 10:30, 11 o'clock. Now I go to about 12:30 because I have to see more just cataract evaluations because of my partner retiring. So it's not just the lens, but it's my partner retiring, more business. Thursday is kind of the same thing. I used to be done earlier. Now I stay there an extra hour or so. My Monday, Wednesday clinics, they maybe go an extra 30 minutes, but not an hour and a half longer. And it's not always like that. But how that's come about is my conversation, my education with patients is very fine tuned. My office, we run these patients through very efficiently. So the way I do it now, so if I do 60 surgeries a week and 20 of them are LALs, 15 to 20 are LALs, roughly. That makes for a lot of light treatments. And so on a typical full day of clinic, I'll start off my day. There'll be a couple of LDDs first thing and some caddy valves and Yagi valves early on. And then I sprinkle a few more LDDs through the morning when I first get back from lunch, a few more LDDs after lunch, and then scatter through the afternoon, then maybe 3 or 4 at the end of the day. And we'll typically do between 10 and 13, 14 LDD treatments in a full day. I don't just do them one day. I do them all 5 days of the week. So if I'm like on Friday, tomorrow, I'll be in surgery. I'll do 25 cases and I'll go back to my office about 10:30, 11 o'clock, and I'll probably have 4 or 5 LDDs. And so I'm kind of spacing them out throughout the day. I don't do the refractions. My techs do the refractions. I have 3 techs that are trained specifically to do the exact same type of refraction. They're COA, 2 of them are COAs, one of them a COT. They've been with me for a long time. And so they know what they're doing. You got to make sure you have experienced techs to be able to let them do that. But they refract a whole lot better than I do. So I trust their refractions. That's the most important part of these treatments. The refractions have to be spot on. And then I would do the adjustments initially. After a while of really getting backed up on that and realizing the lock-in treatments are really simple and there's no really discussion to have there, I started turning those over to my technicians. I talked to Dr. Kurtz at RxSight. We had a couple of Zoom meetings about that, and he was all for it. And Texas, it's all good to do that here in Texas. It all falls on my shoulders in Texas, whatever I delegate to my staff, just like appellation tonometry. And so then what was it, maybe 6 months ago? So now my techs have been doing the lock-ins for about 3+ years, 3.5 years. They're good with the machine. They're good with the lens. They're good at using the slit lamp. I have no hesitation to let them do the adjustments. So now I let those 3 do the adjustments. I only have 3 of them that do it. I have 6 techs, but only 3 of them do the adjustments. I still have the conversation and the planning with the patient, but I'm not having to run down the hall to the LDD room to do the adjustment or the treatment. I just see the patient in the room, see how they're doing, have a little conversation with them. We make a plan, how we want to focus their eyes, how we want to adjust the eyes that day. And then the techs take it from
I
there.
think I lost you there
And
for a
so it's
second,
just like having a
McCarty.
little,
Can you hear me okay?
oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Are we good? All right. Can you all still hear me?
We can hear you, yes, sir.
I think it was Matt.
Yeah,
we
so
lost Matt.
I was able to.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, did we
I'm
lose
good.
Matt? Oh,
Matt's
no.
back.
Okay, good. Yeah, so having done that now, and my fear was, well, how are the patients going to receive that? Well, because my techs have been doing this for a long time, they know what we're going to do. They know my what I say to the patients. They know how the machine works, and so they have full confidence going in there. They're not in there kind of fuddling around, figuring out what button does what. They've been doing it, and so the patients have complete confidence in them. I've had no patients say anything about the techs doing those treatments even. And so now I don't do any treatments. That has completely revolutionized my clinic. And it just flows so smoothly now. So, if I have I don't like to see a lot of patients in a day. I had to see 80 yesterday because I was gone on Monday. I was out of town. And so, but I got through 80 patients. We were done by about 5:30, and we had 14 LDDs that day. I did none of them. And there's no way I would have been done by 5:30 if I had to do all those LDDs. And so there's ways to make it efficient. We have different colored charts, for the fee sheet. So we know which patients are LDD. We have little folders if it's just a refraction. They're coming just for a refraction, for a lock-in, or for an adjustment. And so we really keep it specified so we know what the patient's going to be there for just by glancing at the color of their chart or a little clip that's on their chart. And the techs that aren't doing the adjustments, they take up the extra slack there and working up the other patients. And I think it's just a matter of, in your clinic, the type of techs you have, you can make it work where you can stay busy, see a lot of patients, and it's not going to take up too much of your time.
Well, one of the things that I mention to folks is that it does take a little bit longer. You found some choreography to make it manageable, but it's also the uniqueness of this offering is that patients get to test drive their vision along the way. And so by design, it takes a minute because it's a patient-driven outcome. And so I think that, that one of the things that I think is one of the, really the only negatives about this technology is a masked, positive as well. Dr. McCarty, I want to thank you for your time. And we try to keep these sessions to just about a half an hour or so, maybe a little longer or less. But I know you've got a busy clinic and a busy surgery to get back to. And thanks for dropping some knowledge on us today. Next week, everybody, we're going to be talking about IG, interventional glaucoma, and how to implement it at the practice level. And we're going to be talking with our friend Casey Gantz, another Texan, who is going to help us understand how the workshops that are coming up throughout the fall and coming up at Askers can really help speed up your adoption of interventional glaucoma. So feel free to share that with your friends and colleagues. And Dr. McCarty, thanks so much for being part of this.
You bet. Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure for sure.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.